So, welcome everyone to the FundaYao Podcast, a weekly discussion where we talk about remote sensing in Africa, in China, the global south, and the rest of the world. And today I'm delighted to have Steve McClure here, a good friend of mine and co-worker from before, who worked many years also in Wuhan University as an English editor, helping students to publish papers, right, and get that all done. So tell us a little bit, Steve, how did that happen? You're not a remote sensing expert. You are not an English major, right? So how did it come that you ended up kind of as an English editor in a Chinese university?
By accident, mainly.
Okay.
My degrees are in sociology with a concentration in GIS because I was asking spatial questions instead of sociological questions. I was always asking the question, where's it at? Why is it there? What is it next to? What's it inside of? What it's outside of? Those kinds of questions don't really come up in sociology. So my background's in social science theory and, mixed methods and from a sociological perspective. But because I was sitting in a geography department with a bunch of Chinese PhD students and visiting, research faculty from China, I ended up reading people's papers, and then I got invited to come to Wuhan University and work. It took a year for people to persuade me to come to work at Leesmars, because at that particular time I was trying to do a PhD because I didn't have anything better to do at that particular time. And come to Wuhan University meant I had to end my PhD program and become an ABD. It was a good move. I really enjoyed working at Leesmars. I enjoyed helping people get their papers published. I think the research environment is really exciting. I got to teach things the way I wanted to teach them and try different things that were experimental and things I could have never gotten away with when I was teaching in the U.S. at George Mason University, where it was very structured and you were accountable for the material and it had to fit certain criteria and was very rigid.
Yes.
So
what were you
story?
What were you teaching in Wuhan University?
Well, I just taught people how to write. I was teaching scientific writing and methodology.
Okay.
So I didn't know what the methodology part was, but I assumed it was the methodology of writing papers. But then you get into to think about scientific writing, you have to get into the philosophy of science and how do you present truth claims and how do you defend truth claims. So it's a little bit more complicated than just figuring out how to write a IMRAD paper, introduction, methods, materials, results, analysis, and discussion. To get it to that format is, that's the end of the road on your writing process, not the beginning.
Yes. Okay. So, and I remember, before you retired, it was about a time when AI came up, right? I mean, we talked about AI in courses and in workshops together. So around that time that AI really came up, it's also around when you retired. So my question is, do you think nowadays when everybody uses AI for writing, right? Do we still need courses on scientific writing, or do we just let the AI write everything?
I think AI could take the grunt work out of doing research and writing papers. The hardest, a lot of times for a lot of people, the hardest part is to deal with the grammar and the structural issues of putting the mechanics of it. AI can facilitate that. I've been writing technical papers since I came back to the States. And I found that I can, using ChatGPT, all the different AI tools, I can produce a credible technical paper in 4 days when it used to take me, 4 to 6 weeks. So it speeds up the process. I use the AI tools as sort of a research assistant, collaborator, reviewer, and it speeds up the process because you're bouncing things off of the machine. You can't use it to write the paper itself. You have to come up with the ideas. You're the one that has to do the thinking part. The machine can't do that, otherwise you'll get garbage. But I think it really can facilitate your writing process and improve your writing skills. However, I mean, what I found here when I write technical papers using it, there's a stigma associated with using AI tools because right now there's a big backlash against AI since people are concerned about the explosion of data centers and the loss of certain mid-level jobs to AI, and I think of it sort of as a neo-Luddite sort of resistance to it.
Yeah, I think
So
that is.
when I write things, what?
I think that's true. That's a bit also difference to, I think still a bit of difference to China, where at least, I don't know all of China, right? It's a huge country. But at least in my experience around here, we still kind of encourage students to use AI maybe carefully, right, in a way, but it is encouraged rather than discouraged. While when we have visitors from Europe, I remember who are, guest professors who are more hostile against AI, right? So I think that is, it's a bit of difference still, right?
I think it's growing. I mean, I think here at, I write the technical papers and people tell me, don't mention that you're using DeepSeek or whatever to write the paper, and people, if I write something fast and I use, like an essay, like a 1,000 to 2,000 word essay on some hot topic, and I don't police it for AI tells, then I send it to someone to review, and they say, did you use AI on this? There's sort of a stigma. For people that spent their entire academic career learning to write mechanically, it's threatening to see things produced quickly and accurately using those tools. So I think it's interesting. I think it's sort of elitist. I think for people that are not English language natives, native English speakers, I think that these tools can really help with the mechanical parts of writing that previously used to slow people down. And you can get asked questions, about are these paragraphs correct? Do they have topic sentences? Do they have appropriate transition sentences? You can ask the questions to the tables and the figures, work with the text, and it'll give you an answer. It might not be the right answer. It might, it's based on its Scopius and database. So there's biases in it, but, if you've done the reading, if you're familiar with the discipline, then you're the master of the tool. The tool's not your master. But I mean, these same questions came up when people went, when GIS, when it was first introduced, was seen that way, when, things like the statistical package for the social sciences was first developed, people were talking about, garbage in and garbage out. So it's, I think anytime there's a new technology that comes on the scene, it's either the miracle cure to all that ails us, or it's the demon from hell. And until it gets integrated into what people are doing. Even things like Word. I mean, it does editing tools. It facilitates the writing process itself. And, when I first was writing papers in undergraduate, when you said cut and paste, it was really cutting and pasting paper.
Yes.
And, and to do a lit review, you had to go to a library, go through a card catalog to find where the indexes of publications for that year. You'd start with the most recent journals on the rack and go through them to find the relevant articles, and then use keywords to search through books of abstracts, and then you'd go find the actual articles that were bound in volumes, and then you had to go and take notes on them. And copy machines were expensive and hard to get, hard to access. So, so those tools sped up the writing process. A typical paper back in the 70s would maybe have 20 or so citations, maybe, and hand-drawn maps and hand-drawn tables. And now you can just sort of, when Word came in, and the whole Microsoft Office suite, that you could do it using Excel and Word. So this isn't anything new. It's just that people are going to have to get used to making the transition.
Yes.
And I think in China they're much more open to technology and innovation than they are in the United States and Western countries, where this stuff is seen as a threat more than a benefit.
Yeah, but I also think it's because but I also think it's because of the language. Because for sure in China, if you say, well, it helps us to write better English, right, so that we can publish, it's more welcome, right? Everybody, even the professors use it, right, because it's not the first language to start with. So I think that also is an important factor why it's maybe more open to it, right? Now,
I also think there's a much more openness to innovation in China than there is elsewhere.
Yeah, sure. That is also in my experience quite true. In that, I remember there was some talk on it. If you look at at Western or American science fiction, which is typically quite dark, like Black Mirror type of stuff, and Chinese science fiction, which is more like open, happy, looking forward, Star Trek, the old Star Trek ideals. I think that also shows a bit of cultural difference in maybe how we perceive the future.
I just, when I think about AI, I think of the phrase new quality productive forces. And in China, the way the AI has been integrated into already exists, it's layered into things in a way that's very different. Here, it's all being driven by private enterprise in a way where it's outside of, and it's not serving to show social benefit, really. It's, there to increase profitability. And then, most communities right now are facing a explosion of data centers. When those things, they go up all around you, and they're huge, and they're taking up the water supply, and they're using up all the electricity, and the large consumers of electricity get discounted
electricity,
and it means that residential users subsidize the data centers. So there's a lot of friction.
Yeah.
So, the data centers and AI go together, and, for the longest time, I think people thought of working on their laptop, Googling things was sort of light, and, they didn't see the infrastructure that was supporting it. They never saw, went to, Mountain View, California to go see all the data centers that are out there, or, Ashburn, Virginia.
Yeah.
But
I see.
there are big differences.
Yes. But we want to talk a bit about scientific writing today. So now we have the AI, right? So lots of the grammar and wording and also paragraph structures, the AI can help us. So what would be, from your experience, what would be still problems that an AI can fix, right? What would be writing problems that you experienced a lot?
Generally I use ChatGPT, and I found that when you use it, it defaults to a low-level writing level. So you have to very carefully word your prompts so that you have topic sentences on each paragraph, and that you have transition sentences that connect one paragraph to the next. And then you have to also think about wording. It'll use words like important or essential and those kinds of subjective language in the text, and it tends to, and that's sort of it's a little bit too subjective and too newspapery, sort of popular, sort of advertising.
Yes.
So you have to be careful what your prompts are to get it to write things properly. And you have to be careful about how you edit it yourself. You're going to read each sentence to make sure that it's not writing in a voice other than your own.
Yeah, you cannot just copy and paste
That's what I'd
it.
recommend.
Yeah.
Now, I think the biggest problem I've found with it is making sure that you have transition sentences connecting paragraphs together. Also, if you get it to write a lit review, it doesn't write it in a way that integrates. You have to do the integration. You have to tell it how to write it to put the text, the citations into the text. I mean, nobody wants to read a lit review that's just a catalog, basically a annotated bibliography of everything that's been written in your field. You really need to think through it and how you're going to integrate it together to show how your work builds on the existing work, extends it, or contradicts what's gone before. So you have to show what the value of your writing is for the reader. AI cannot do that. That's a human task, the thinking part.
Yeah,
It can help you.
literature reviews are quite terrible, actually. So I always tell my students, I can help a lot, but be very careful with literature review. A, because maybe they're hallucinating papers, and B, because they read, as you said, more like a list of papers, not really integrated or not really relating to your work as well.
Well, I have extensive annotated bibliographies I've written over the years, and I have them in folders on my desktop. And when I'm writing a paper, I want to go back to the papers that I've actually read and use those. And I input those annotated bibliographies into the AI and use that to help me to generate meaningful lit reviews. I specify what argument I'm trying to make or what I'm trying to do in the prompt, and then it generates something that actually is coherent. But it's still, you can really mess it up. So you really have to read through very carefully, word by word, close reading to make sure that your AI-generated lit review actually makes sense and it's saying what you want it to say, not what the copious would have it say. Remember, it's just a machine. It's doing the dumb work. It can't think. It can't make the sort of random associations. It doesn't have any life experience. It's just going on a body of material.
Yes.
So you have to be the boss of the AI. You can't allow the AI to think for you because it doesn't think.
So you save some time writing. Yeah, so you save some time writing, and then you have to spend more time reading.
Yep, and you have to pay attention to the logic. Your job is to provide the logic, the ideas, the innovation. The tools will help you get there. And there's so many of them popping up. I mean, I've seen so many great tools. I can't even keep track of them. Every day I'm seeing ads for some new AI tool.
Yeah.
And some of them I just think, they have AI tools that can take notes from your professor's talks and it converts it into text. And I just wonder, from my own sense, you really grasping the material if you're having the machine synthesize it for you. I mean, how are you going to absorb that information if you're just reading what the AI produced? I just think you can rely too much on it.
Yeah, there's certainly a danger to it. I'm also not sure because it can help you summarize and maybe work out the important parts that can be even helpful for learning. But if you don't engage with the material yourself, your brain is not really active, right? Then you're not learning anything. So I think smart use of AI would be helpful, but I'm not sure if we are using it smart. Right?
Well, I watch these ads. They pop up on my my YouTube channels all the time for all these new tools, and it's because I go to the same things that students go to. It's all stuff related to college life. Tools to take notes, tools to help you do research. I just think
Yes. So let me, from your vast experience, do you helped writing. How many papers did you help write over the years? Do you have any idea?
Hundreds.
Hundreds. So
I
you
estimated probably about 1,000.
okay? So let's say around 1,000 papers that you helped getting published. From your vast experience, so what are typical problems that you often see in papers if they get rejected? What in your experience normally causes rejection?
Not being clear about what your argument is, not having a clear thesis statement presented early on in the paper, usually in the introduction to make it clear what's the story you're trying to tell and what are the protagonists, what are the antagonists. If it's just descriptive, nobody wants to read it. You have to get the interest, and it has to be somehow relate to a problem that people are dealing with in the field. Papers that get rejected are oftentimes very timid and are not challenging anything. They're just sort of replicating what existing work has gone before. And they're just minimal amount of innovations and just boring.
Yes.
And the reviewers will sense that. So they'll reject them because they just don't, why am I reading this paper or why should I read this paper? There's so much to read and so little time to read it. People are, they want to get to the meat of the paper as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think
they don't want to beat around the bush.
I think now that even is like something like that now is directly a desk rejection, because now in, I don't know, TIGAS or somewhere, we have now desk rejection rates of 85 or 90% of the papers don't even make it to review anymore. So if you don't convince, the editor or the reviewers why your paper is important or what's interesting in it, they maybe don't even send it to reviewers anymore.
Why would they? It's hard to find reviewers. Nobody
Yes.
wants to read anything.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a crisis in academic publishing.
Yes.
Everybody wants to publish, but nobody wants to read.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I
the
don't
whole,
want to read it.
the whole industry is basically fucked because we are just, people publish to get published and don't consider readers. And actually, the whole industry is focused on the authors now, right? So you finish your KPI, you get your performance indicators, and readers they don't even come in the picture.
No. It's just so strange. Another big problem is people use too much jargon. People think that they write a long, long paper with lots of big, complicated words, long sentences with intricate grammatical constructions, that's going to make it sound learned and scientific and scholarly, and that's going to increase their chances to get published. My point of view is that makes it difficult to understand what you're trying to explain. Usually, the more technical the language is, the more interpretations there is for the words. So if you use 10 technical terms in a sentence, it sounds so cool, but no one's going to understand what in the hell you're trying to tell the reader.
Yeah.
So my rule of thumb is keep it simple, stupid. Use the technical language sparingly. Make sure that people know how you're going to be using the term. When you first start to use the term, give some kind of a clarification of how you're going to use it. I just had a couple examples of it. Like ontology means one thing in computer science, and it means something very different in philosophy. They borrow the term from philosophy, but they use it differently. And so what do you mean when you use the word ontology? And people drop words like that in, or, words like stochastic or things like that sound very scientific, but what are you actually trying to say? So I think I'd be very careful about how you use the technical terms, particularly in geosciences, because it's an enabling discipline that sits between biology, computer science, sociology, geography. A bunch of different disciplines interact with it. So you're talking to audiences that might be that are very interdisciplinary. So how are you using a term? Who knows?
Do you think the overuse of jargon is more like is that the same with what I want to ask, is that the same with US students
Yes.
also? Okay, so it's not just Chinese, because in
No.
okay, because in Chinese writing I see that too, But also, I mean, German academic writing is also famous for that, right? So, yeah, so it's also quite jargony. So, but you think it's a general issue?
Yeah, because you fall in love with the jargon when you go to grad school, and that's what you're getting taught, is how to understand the genre
Yeah.
of a field. I mean, particularly in sociology, there's lots of jargon, and people.
Yeah.
I mean, I read some of the cultural studies articles and sociological texts from the theoretical end, and it's like nothing but jargon in all of it.
Yeah.
It's like on and on and on and on, on and on and on, and there's certain buzzwords like interrogate or illuminate or things like that, bricolage, those kinds of words. They like to throw that around because, there's an overlap between sociology and English literature or modern languages. So theory is turned into a thing, and particularly in the area of postmodern, theory.
Yeah.
And it gets so convoluted you can't understand it, and there's been articles where they've ripped it to shreds because it's just too much jargon and unintelligible to mere mortals.
I remember my minor in sociology. There's a lot of jargon in there. That's true. Sociology is quite strong there. But the teachers at the time explained it to me a bit like because it's close to everyday life, so they have to make sure that you use the words scientifically and well defined, and it may sound a bit too jargon, but they want to avoid mixing it with newspaper, right, or everyday writing. So I got it a bit, but yeah, German sociology is quite difficult to read.
Yeah, but you see that creeping into computer science too.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's not only. It's not only.
And then you read technical papers from Microsoft or some of those, the sort of commercial end, and they deliberately write the jargon in ways that people, this sounds so important and so scientific, and I don't know the jargon, so it puts them at a different level than you as the user. So they must be brilliant over at Microsoft or at Google or what have you.
Yeah.
So they use it strategically to pitch product.
Yes. Okay. And I guess if you rely on the AI rating, AI also puts in a lot of jargon if you let it. Right.
No, I don't know about that because I like to write things so that people can understand it. And I've learned because I'm writing. When I write technical papers, I'm writing for an audience that doesn't necessarily read the technical literature. So if I use a technical term, people will stop reading it. And the other thing I think is a big problem is data, presenting data in papers. People are sloppy about putting tables together or figures and that kind of thing, and putting too much information and not interpreting it. And oftentimes we'll show a table or figure and just repeat in the text what the table shows or what the figure shows, when the reader can look at the table or figure. What they want to know, they want to see is how you interpret the data.
Yeah, what does it
the
mean?
write-up. So, yeah, what does it mean, not what it says. And oftentimes the paper will go on and on and on and just repeat the content of the table in paragraph form. And just this number, this number, this number, this number. It just... And it just goes on and on and on and on and puts you to sleep, or repetition of the same analysis over and over and over again with multiple different examples. And I just wonder whether that really is what you want to present in the paper, or whether you want to create it such a way as streamline it down to show the critical information rather than all the information. I think sometimes in your first submission to the journal, keeping the paper to 5,000 to 6,000 words instead of the 8,000 word limit or the 13,000 word limit makes sense, because then they can read it, and then the editors and the reviewers will ask all the questions, and then the paper that started out at 6,000 words ends up being 10,000 words, because you're going to have to respond to the reviewer comments.
It will always get longer.
But making it at least readable and clear. Yeah. And they'll ask all sorts of stupid questions, and the more important your paper is, the more controversial your paper is, the more reviewers you're going to have. But, the really interesting papers, they send them out to a bunch of potential reviewers, and, you might have 5 reviewers on a paper that's interesting or controversial. They're looking for the rejection.
Yes.
Or that, or they're, I read one paper, the last year I was at Leesmars, I read one paper, it had 7 reviewers.
Yes, that's a lot,
And, helping that author go through and revise the paper according to the comments of the 7 reviewers was really a nightmare. Because oftentimes the reviewers have directly contradictory advice.
Yes, that's true. That's it. That's the problem.
And the more you add, the more contradictions you have to deal with. So I was driving the author, crazy. I helped with the first initial submission for that paper, and then getting it back with the 7 reviewers. It's like, it took longer to put together to respond to the viewer comments than it did to do the first draft that we submitted.
Yeah.
But you have to consider that.
All right. Yeah.
When you're doing your first submission.
Right. All right. Steve, our time is up, so thank you so much for talking with me about that. I think we still have a lot to talk about, so we're going to do a second part sometime in the future, right? Because we still have lots to talk about on publication and writing, but I try to keep it around 30 minutes, not to be...
I just wanted... The 3 main points that I wanted to raise is that make sure that the point of your paper is clear at the very beginning. Who are the, understand who are the protagonist and antagonist and what you're proposing, so that you have some kind of a story to tell. Make your, be very frugal with your use of technical language, so that your paper is understandable to a broad audience, and be sure to interpret your data that you present. Be careful and very conscientious about how you put your tables and figures together so that they support your argument, and you focus on the interpretation. And that way you can get a shorter paper that can go to reviewers, and rather than getting desk rejected when the first submission.
And
that's the 3 points I wanted to make.
Yes, and shorter is actually certainly better, because with the reviewer comments it will automatically get longer. And nobody wants to read 20 pages papers anymore, right? So
no. I just remember the paper we were working on, I was co-authoring on. The paper started at 4,000 words and ended up being 13,000. The final version with the reviewer comments. So that happens.
If you add that in, that really happens. That really happens. Mm-hmm. It's not even that uncommon. I mean, double the size is maybe a bit uncommon, but adding, 25% is quite common. Right. The comments come in, they ask for extra experiment. Yeah. So,
our initial submission for that paper was to Science. And, generally the articles they want you to write them about 4,500 words or so. But I mean, you gotta, when you're deciding, when you're getting ready to write, you have to figure out who you're going to submit it to and look at the standards that they have. So the structure of the paper and all depends on what the particular journal, your first choice journal, wants, and then you can modify it as you go down from your top choice down to your safety choice for the, to get it published. Anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know it's we're limited to half an hour, so.
Yeah, we are not fixed to half an hour, but I set that limit by myself, saying, maybe people don't want to listen me talking for more than an hour, right? Not like 4-hour long talks. But yeah, thank you so much. I think we will make a second part sometime in the near future, because I believe we still have a lot to talk about. So thank you so much, Steve.